Good morning, Devon. Adastorm asked, have any thoughts on AI in making games in the future? Do you think it will be used quite a lot in the near future to speed up game development and cost? Um, well, I think a lot of people mistakenly think that AI is some magical solution that's going to make everything cheaper and it's going to replace human beings, and it's not. Um, in order to govern AI to get it to the point where it makes good results, you still need human beings running that system. You have to have someone there to do the fine tuning. So, as an example, the way it is right now, like if you want ChatGPT to draft you something, you can give it parameters and it will draft something, but then you have to go in and fine tune all that. So, there still needs to be artists and there still needs to be writers and editors and people who fine tune those things. So we're a long way from AI being able to be like, here's a video game for you to play. Um, does it help speed up the game development process and cost? We can't answer the cost question yet. We can answer the development timeline. Yes and no. It does require learning, so you have to have someone who can learn how to use AI in their workflow, and that takes time. Um, it's also going to take time for the technology to get better. So, yes and no. Um, right now, it's a great tool for drafting, whether it's a script or a rough piece of art or something where you could just have like 20 ideas, throw them on paper, or in this case, throw them into ChatGPT or some similar program. You throw your parameters in there, there's 20 different ideas, and it spits out a bunch of results. Most of those results are going to be shit. Or they're going to be, you've seen the AI stuff in terms of artwork. It'll be like the hand will have 9 fingers, there'll be like 3 ears sticking out of the side of the face. It might throw back 50 results, but only 3 of those results might be usable. You then take those 3 results and you give it further parameters to maybe the colors aren't right, maybe the head's too small, maybe that line of dialogue doesn't work right, or maybe you want to change this section of the backstory. So you give it more parameters and it spits out more results, and then you have to filter those results to see if they're usable or not. There is still a lot of hands on required in terms of AI. So someone has to still be there to be a part of that process, which is man hours. So it doesn't necessarily affect the cost of projects because you still need people helming the AI programs. Um, in terms of game development, the place where AI is potentially going to be very useful is in helping to create really cool concept art for the marketing teams to use, really cool concept art for the world builders to use, and the level designers and the zone designers. That artwork will be pivotal in not just like 2D artwork, but also 3D environments, like being able to go into Unreal 5 and say, "Hey, Unreal 5, I want to make a really cool dungeon set in a volcano, and I want there to be lava waterfalls, and I want there to be, um, an underground cavern that has a dragon corpse in it, and I want to have 3 different outposts where we have 3 different factions of dwarves that have set up camp and they're all at war with each other. And I want this, 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 and this." And then you let that go into Unreal 5. It creates a draft version of that dungeon for you. And then you and your world building team go in and you start picking apart the draft and you start doing the fine tuning and the hand crafting. So if you've ever done game dev, one of the big processes that used to take time and effort and cost was gray boxing. So you would have an artist come in or a team of artists and they would gray box everything out. So they would create boxes representative of what the final assets would be. Here's a castle. Here's a bunch of trees. Here's a fallen wagon and a bridge. And so those would not be actual 3D assets. They would be gray, boxy shapes. You can now get AI to do that part of the process for you. Again, you still need a human being behind it, but we have eliminated the need to have a team of people doing the gray boxing process. So now you can tell AI, gray box this for me, The AI will then gray box everything for you. Well, not entirely. We're getting to that point. I'm using this as a point of analogy. That's where AI is going to be useful. The creation of concept art, the creation of basic zone structures, basic gray boxing for dungeons, but you still need a team of artists to come in and actually handcraft all of those buildings and castles and everything else. Now, as AI gets better, yes, the theory is that eventually AI will be able to replace that process as well. And so instead of needing a team of people creating assets, you'll be able to put your parameters in and you'll be able to spit out a bunch of assets, but you'll still need human eyes on those to go through and make sure that they all look right and that don't have 3 ears sticking out the side or 9 fingers on one hand or 4 eyeballs on one side of the face. Like you still have to have a human being go through that and check the parameters and everything else. Um, we're a long way from it being a heavily useful component in game development. It's also going to be useful in the creation of quests. So already you can see some basic structuring in terms of like we've got radiant quests in many games these days. That's the fundamental base layer of AI working to create quests. They're generic, they're fetch quests, but they do leverage that base technology of an AI program spitting out random quests for players to use. Now, the repetitiveness of that just depends on so many factors, but different games do it to different levels of success. The technology is still relatively new. We also have already seen procedural generation in terms of terrain for years now. That's already working. It's very evident, like if you've ever played No Man's Sky, it's very evident from a visual perspective that that is procedurally generated technology. Like it's the planets don't look unique enough or original enough. Definitely tell that it's AI at work. Um, Starfield has a lot of parameters that they've used to set up their planets, but you can definitely notice the repetitive nature of things once you start exploring beyond 30, 40 planets. With 1,000 planets in that galaxy, like you can see it after a while. As the technology gets better, the idea is that it will be harder to tell what is handcrafted versus what is procedurally generated. That's just technology evolving. Is it going to be happening anytime in the near future? I don't think so. I think we're a decade out at least. I think we're 10 years out from us being able to squint really hard at AI and think, wait, is that handcrafted or is that AI? I can't quite tell. I think we're at least 10 years away from that point. Because right now it's still very obvious when someone has used AI or procedural generation to create something. Quests could be really fun. Where it's going to get really crazy is if we get to the point where you can do like the holo suites in Star Trek, where you have creators who are content creators, who are writers, who are authors, and they can work within this holo suite of VR tools and AI tools to create these stories that are holographic stories that people can tell. But we're decades away, not decades, we're probably centuries away from that technology being a reality. But in that world, you won't need anybody other than you. The computer will do it all for you. But we're a long, 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 long way away from that being the reality. If you could look at Star Wars: The Old Republic, I think that's realistic in the next 10 years to get to the point where you can have an AI system where it can create not only the quests, but also all of the dialogue so that the games are fully voiced with different types of voice acting, fully done by AI. We already have rudimentary AI voice creation. It's not that great. There's some that's good, some that's not so good. So I think within the next 10 years, we could theoretically get to a point where we could see small games being made by a team of, one or two people, where it's a fully voiced game that uses AI for the quests, it uses AI for the voiceovers, it uses AI for all the writing, it uses AI for, some of the asset creation. Um, it's not quite there music-wise yet. I mean, it's just another tool in the toolbox. I use ChatGPT all the time for drafting purposes. It's great. I no longer have to freehand drafts. I just get an idea in my head and I set that as a parameter and I go, give me some, and then it spits out a bunch of rough notes and I can take those notes and go, I like that, trash, 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 like that, shove that to the side. Now I've got 3 paragraphs that I can use to get something rolling, and then from there I can flesh it out from there. So it's um, oh, it's already if you haven't watched it, Aidstorm, you need to watch what Netflix does. AI lip syncing is already but only with the companies that are willing to spend on it. Netflix does this. So if you've ever watched a show on Netflix that has an international audience and they've done dubs for, and it's mostly on the big budget shows, but this tech, I was watching this a couple weeks back. Netflix has it to where if you're watching a show and it doesn't matter, English, and you're watching it with English dubs and English subs, but then you change it to like German, German dubs and English subs, the AI will attempt to match the lips, the movement of the lips on the actors to the dubs that are being spoken on screen. It's fucking amazing. It's not flawless, it's not perfect, but it is incredibly well done. So Netflix is already using that tech. And I think, as far as I'm aware, they're sort of the leaders in that technological space. But that's already at play as well. So there's some cool stuff out there. Yeah, I mean, we're a long way from it being. It's a long way from AI replacing people's jobs, but I think it is very, very important that if you plan on working in the creative fields, whether it's as a writer, a songwriter, an author, an artist, a 3D artist, a concept artist, whatever, you really do need to be learning AI. Like, if you're in 2025 trying to, get a job or maintain a position in a workplace from 2025 and beyond, or if you're someone who's coming up trying to get, thinking that you want to work in this space over the next 5 years, you need to be learning AI. If you're not learning AI, you're shooting yourself in the foot for sure.